Hi, my name's Benji and welcome to the Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Takenoko, a 2 to 4 player competitive game with a number of different mechanics, but the primary ones are grid movement because you're going to be moving figures around a modular board, and also pattern building, set collection and tile placement, because there are going to be 3 different types of objectives where you're going to need to place tiles in the right place, and also you're going to need to be growing and eating bamboo in order to achieve those. Now you play as the Japanese, having received a rare giant panda bear from the Chinese to ease diplomatic relations, but that panda is a pesky panda, a hungry panda and a greedy panda, just like me. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game is to be the player with the most points after a set number of rounds dependent on the number of players. To set up the game, each player will need to bring their own player reference sheet. You'll then need to shuffle and pile the 3 different types of objective cards, and then also have access to the Emperor card, the improvement cards, irrigation channels and the bamboo. You'll then need to shuffle the plot tiles and place them face down with easy access for everyone. And then the special pond tile is the only tile that will be placed face up in the middle of the table, where you'll also place the gardener and the panda figures. You'll then each draw one of each coloured objective card to start the game with, and then you're good to go. So each player turn is broken down into 2 steps, the first of which is to determine weather conditions, and you do this by rolling the weather dice, and dependent on what you roll will mean that there will be a global effect on your turn. However, on each player's first turn, that step is skipped. So we're actually going to teach the turn order in reverse order and come back to that step at the end. Then we move to step 2, and this is where you'll perform actions and meet objectives. Now when performing actions, you're going to be taking 2 actions from a possible 5 that can be seen on the character reference sheet. And the reason you've got these 2 action tiles here is that you're going to place them on the relevant action when you take it, because you cannot take the same action twice on your turn. So the first action is the plot action, and this is where you're going to take 3 plot tiles from the plot deck and place one of them on the board. So if player 1 decides to place it adjacent to the special pond tile there, and the remaining 2 tiles are placed at the bottom of the plot deck. Now as soon as you place a tile adjacent to the special pond tile, it's immediately irrigated. So you'll place 1 bamboo piece of that colour on the tile. The second action is for you to take an irrigation channel, and that's what these tokens are here. So you can either place them immediately on your character reference sheet to be used on a future turn, or use them immediately, and using them doesn't take up any of your actions. Now the reason you might want to do that, and we're going to skip ahead a couple of turns now, is that once you start placing plots that are not adjacent to the special pond tile, they won't automatically be irrigated. So we'll place a bamboo piece here on a previous turn because it's adjacent to the special pond tile, but this has no means to be irrigated because it's not adjacent. So here a player would need 2 irrigation channels, and to run an irrigation channel you need to do so starting from the special pond tile, going on the edge of one of the plot tiles until you place a channel adjacent to the tile you wish to irrigate. So as soon as a player does that, remember that placing these doesn't take up an action. You'll do similar, and for the first time place a bamboo piece on that tile. We then move to the gardener action, and the gardener and panda actions are very similar in that if you use that action you can move the gardener figure in a straight line up until a point you wish them to stop, and the place you want them to stop in is actually where you're looking to grow bamboo. So here the player decides to move the gardener just 1 space in a straight line to this yellow plot, and as soon as you do that, that gardener is going to grow a bamboo on an irrigated space in any irrigated space of the same colour that's adjacent. So let's just say there was a yellow tile here, then you'd also place that was irrigated, then you'd also place a bamboo piece there. Now the panda action does actually the reverse of that. So the same principle applies. You move the panda in a straight line of your choosing, and the plot that the panda ends up on will actually eat one of those pieces. So this player moves the panda over here, and that will then be placed on that player's character reference sheet. And then finally, you can choose to draw an objective card. Now, as we know from where we drew one of each type of objective cards, there are 3 different piles. So anytime you meet the conditions of an objective, so here the player has got 4 yellow bamboo pieces on a plot that also has a watershed improvement. And we haven't talked about improvements much, but we will in a moment. Then you'll flip that card face up and it will score you a number of points at the end of the game. So we then go back to step 1, which is where we determine whether conditions. Remember, we skipped that on each player's first turn. So the first thing you'll do on your turn is roll this dice, and then we're going to go through what each of these mean now. So the first is when the sun comes out, and this is where you get to take 3 actions instead of 2, but remembering you can never take the same action twice on your turn. Here the rain comes a-pouring, and this is where you can choose any tile that's irrigated on the board and place 1 bamboo piece. But remember, you can never have more than 4 pieces on a given tile. This is where the wind starts gusting, and this circumvents the normal rules for actions in that you can play the same action twice on your turn. Then the storm comes a-raging, and this is where the panda, in desperate fear, goes to any tile of the player's choice on the board and noms on 1 bamboo piece. And then we have the cloud symbol, and this is where you get to take one of these improvement tiles. Remember, we talked about improvements a moment ago, and similar to the irrigation channels, you can place it on your character reference sheet or use it immediately. However, you can only place these on tiles that don't already have an innate improvement on them, or on a tile that doesn't have any bamboo currently on it. So these fertilizer tiles will allow you to grow 2 bamboo pieces every time bamboo is grown on a given space. These watershed improvements, as I'm sure you can imagine, will irrigate the tile it's on, negating the need for you to run an irrigation channel to it. And then finally, these enclosure tiles will keep the panda at bay, because if you place that on a tile with bamboo pieces, the pandas will not be able to gain access to them. They will proceed like that until one player has got a certain number of objectives dependent on the player count. And the player first to reach that number will actually gain the Emperor card, which you'll see here is worth 2 points. Then that player will finish their turn, and then all other players will get 1 last turn. Now, to score up, you're simply going to add up the number of completed objectives and the points that they gave you, and the player with the most points is then the winner. So who is this game for? Well, this is a game that fits in the light to medium weight division and really does act as a great introduction to all different types of mechanics that will interconnect and will really help you as you further explore ball gaming. Now, in an easy to learn package as well, this really does tick a lot of boxes in terms of an introductory game. If you like the idea of the feudal Japan setting and you like cutesy little games and cutesy little creatures in your games, but beware, that panda has a dark side, then there's probably something here for you. So you might want to consider this if you liked Takenoko, published by Funforge, or Explorers of the North Sea, published by Garfield Games. Although that game shares some mechanics with this, that adds some area control and pick up and deliver elements. So in terms of gameplay, well, kudos to the designer, because they've managed to place all those interconnecting lightweight mechanisms into a game and not make it overly heavy or overly burdensome. This is still really easy to learn, but also a fun and rewarding experience after multiple plays. So real big thumbs up in terms of design idea and design execution. That's some of my favourites. What did I like? Well, the player turns, they're elegant, they're straightforward. You know, the weather conditions all work nicely. Yes, it's completely random unless you're drawing that question mark and you have your choice. But situationally, each of those weather conditions can be either a really good thing or a meh thing. And the same on your the actions you take, not being able to double up on actions unless you get that win condition. Really, I like that idea. It means you can't just go all in on one strategy. You really need to think out in terms of action economy, how you want to make the most of your turn. Now, player scaling is largely in the plus column. Rarely do I find a game that's just as rewarding at 2 players when you're one-on-one, and at 3 players. Now, the more players there are, does make the game slightly harder in the sense of achieving objectives, but everyone's in the same boat, so that's less of an issue. Blah, blah, blah. There's what I would categorise as a pleasant level of competitiveness in this game. So you could say it would work great with families because yes, your opponents can sabotage your game plan, but largely that's going to be unintentionally. And really, how long do you think you can be mad at that cutesy little panda? Now, in terms of the things I didn't like, well, yeah, the wind is the most situational weather condition, probably the most annoying to roll, just like in real life. And perhaps if you're using an action to get an irrigation channel, that's one of the least inspiring things you can do in this game. But you can see how much I enjoy the overall package here. I'm nitpicking to such a degree. So in terms of the look and feel and theme of the game, well, for a family-friendly title like this, it needs to be pretty, it needs to be attractive, and it's check and check on both those requirements. I can't grumble one bit about any of the components found in the box either. This is a game that's just been lovingly crafted from top to bottom. However, it's also a game that should come with its own health warning, like other games of its ilk. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a stand-up box only. You put this sideways on your shelf or in your rucksack, you're in for a world of pain. Next time you unbox it, there's going to be bamboo and components everywhere, and you're going to be living with regret in your life. Now, the theme for a light to medium weight game is what it is. There's a nice little comic strip on front of the rulebook, and you do feel immersed in the setting that you're playing. So I can't grumble in that regard. So with all that being said, Dice vs Cards are going to give a final score of 8 out of 10. Now, this is a game that I've only got good things to say about, and I would highly recommend to anyone. But for any game that's less than medium weight, it's difficult to give those highest of higher ratings. That's why it's not got a 9 out of 10, and 10 out of 10, perfection is just unattainable. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.
The origin of the name panda is the Nepalese word Nigalia Ponya, which means eater of bamboo. In Chinese, the giant panda is called the large bear cat.